goosebumps every time, yeah, 713. The 281, yeah, I'm riding. Why they on me? Why they on me? I'm flying, sipping low-key. I'm sipping low-key and honest, flying rider. I get those goosebumps every time you come around, yeah. You ease my mind, you make everything feel fine. Worry about those comments, I'm way too numb, yeah. It's way too dumb, yeah. I get those goosebumps every time I need the hype, throw that to the side, I get those goosebumps every time, yeah. When you're not around me, throw that to the side, I get those goosebumps every time.
Up the mugs. Yes, sir.
Tune, Black and White Army.
Yes, sir. Welcome to Loaded Bag and UFC. We're back for the transfer show 2 in 2 days. And this is no doubt going to be a good one. We've got the main man back on to talk all things Newcastle United. Look forward to chatting with him. But first of all, Daz, how are you on this fine Monday? I keep thinking it's Tuesday, but it's Monday. It's a Monday evening.
Monday. God has not much has happened since we've been talking to you last, Pete. I've only said goodbye to you like 12 hours ago or something. So yeah, all good. Not much has changed. There's a bit of sun out. It was lashing rain here this morning, but a bit of sun out now, so it's hanging up my screen. So take no notice of that. But rocking something else from the shop today, Pete. from the merch shop. So yeah.
Yes.
All good. All good.
I just thought it was work gear, and then I see the
Adidas. Can't see the Adidas and Loaded Mac. Yeah, so all good. Good Chris will be on later. But how are you, Pete?
I'm all right. Yeah, can't complain. Just waiting to hear some news. We'll get into it in a second, but there's been little bits of movement today, and it'll be good to get into it for sure. But welcome everyone in the chat. Got nearly 200 in the chat. Go through all the tunes. It was super quick. Bill's always one of the first in there with his 2 tunes. Love it. Roy, definitely the right time of the day for Roy. Great to have you with us as well. Minnesota Mag, great to have you along with Gary. Hope you're well. And Joe, saw you liking a few posts on socials earlier, Joe. Great to have you with us. Tony, welcome in, as well as Jimmy.
Transfer Tony.
Yeah, well, may well be. Transfer Tony, yeah, absolutely. Dominic, we're all fingers crossed at the moment, Dominic, but we'll get into that in just a second. N9, great to have you in. Toon Talk, we've got Paul in the house, we've got Dorch Mag, Colin, great to have you with us. Dean, GK, we've got Way in the house, great to have you with us, along with Solo and Kev T, Joe Linton, Mandy, yes. We need to get your details, Mandy, don't we?
Yes, we have.
So send it to the Loaded Mag account if you can, because we need to send you your mug off the back of last night's show. And Antonio Mango was asking the question about that. So I'm glad you're in the chat. Great to have you.
And if you aren't on Twitter, just email us. You'll see the email address on our YouTube page, and we'll pick it up there.
Spot on. And Ewan in the chat too, great to have you with us. And I think there's loads more popping in there, and we'll drop them up as the show is going on. But thank you all for your tunes. We love it, absolutely. But look, as Chris is probably just logging in now, we'll get the main man on. He's waiting in, is it a green room? Is it not?
Nah, it's a Liverpool background, I'm telling you. Let's get him on. Let's be upstanding for the king of ITK. Here he is.
How are we?
How you doing? Okay.
For Cork, is it?
Oh, good. Not too bad, all yourselves.
Good. Yeah, good.
What's up? What are we going to talk about? Weather. The lack of a summer.
We know what we want to talk about, but what have you got to say on some of these topics? And look, let's start with the one that's likely to be done sort of very, very soon. And that is William Osula. So we know, and we gave a little bit of update yesterday with regards to George Culkin. That's what we knew at that point yesterday from his piece in The Athletic. But we had reports, and thank you to Jay on social media. I give him a shout out on his account. He did a great little bit of art there with William Osula. Apparently is on Tyneside. Scott Wilson had mentioned should be done within the next 24 hours and signed and sealed. So look, we've had our opinion on it. We got a lot of mixed messages, Sean, about William Osula, what fans thought. Some thought it was a good deal, understood it. Some people didn't like it. Like, where do you stand on that? And what are your thoughts about William Osula coming in?
Do you know what, on Osula, when you think of it, his profile actually doesn't really exist. You know, like, take Benjamin Sesko aside. You're talking 6'4", good in the air, can play off his left and right foot, good at pressing, back to goal. He has everything that you want in a centre forward, and it's very much about bringing a skill set together. I'm going to be honest with you, I knew nothing about the transfer. I don't think anybody really did, and caught a few people off guard. Supposedly there was murmurs kind of back in 2022, kind of start of the season, that they were looking at him and they've scouted him kind of loosely, so I don't think it was something that somebody that they watched every week. They asked Newcastle players supposedly about what he was like to play against, and they said he was like a battering ram, like, impossible to get off the ball once he's in stride and stuff like that, like, and I think Mitchell knew a lot about him as well, so it was kind of a mix between our scouts knew about him because they had loosely scouted him, and Paul Mitchell knew about him as well, and talking to people who have seen him and who have profiled him, they're basically saying that we bought a skill set, far from the finished article. If you can bring that skill set together, you have one of the best under 21 strikers in Europe. Because he is an absolute handful, or even if you could sharpen one of his skill sets, just made him good with his back to goal and bringing people into play, or made him good on the turn so that he can roll defenders and he can play off his left and right foot, or maybe he's just good at pressing the ball, no pressing, and that's what you get over the season. But even if you take one of his skill sets, which he has probably 5 that could be possibly elite, and if you sharpen those, you have a very, very good centre forward for 10, 15 million. That's nothing in today's market. If you look at the talent pool of under 21 strikers in England at the moment, you have Evan Ferguson, and outside of him, there's nobody there. So now you're talking a player that has Premier League experience at 20 years of age, turned 21 yesterday. Who's there? Take Benjamin Sesko out of the equation on the European market, and that young fella from Atletico Madrid that Chelsea are trying to sign. That skill set doesn't exist. So when you're kind of constrained, you're not bringing in somebody that's going to start. It looks like Wilson doesn't want to move, so his wage is going to stay on the books. I mean, you're kind of tied there. So what are you bringing in exactly? And you want something that's going to mitigate the risk of Wilson being injured, somebody that you can throw on in 70 minutes to help close out a game and hold up the ball, and that's the man that you have. So for us, it makes an awful lot of sense. It's a clever transfer. We'd all be lying if we said we knew a lot about him, but it's much like yourselves. I'm just picking up pieces of information, and somebody who I really trust, and I trust their football opinion. I'm like, yeah, this fella with the Eddie Howe factor and the way he brings on players, even if he only brings them to 50% of the potential, we have a good player on our hands. And I thought there was a great point made by Edit Kev, the stats fella.
Yeah.
The other day he was like, I've looked over a couple of his videos. The eyeball test really doesn't match up with his stats. What makes Kev elite when it comes to stats and all this stuff, and you have all these stat people on Twitter, covering other accounts and all this kind of stuff, what set Kev's apart is that he gets the stats, he watches the game, and he amalgamates his eyeball test with the stats that are there, and he gives a balanced view on the player. And his thing on Osula was, and I can't wait for him to actually kind of publish a bit more on him, is kind of like, I've been very impressed with what I've seen with the eye. His stats don't match up with it. When I get a chance to look through it, I'll give you more kind of thing. So I'm very interested to see what Kevin makes of him, because for me, he's the best on Twitter.
Yeah, definitely. And this is it, is that sometimes I think we're in a world now where everything's assessed with stats. It's like one of the first things that people go to, but it's not the be all and end all. Like, you go back years, 20, 30 years, like a lot of it was, vast majority was eyeball test, and he would have been picked up, I think, a lot quicker had people have given him the eyeball test.
Well, see, it's the thing about stats, Pete, is you have to balance it in the player's role in the team as well. If you look at Botman's stats, his first season, if you looked at based on stats alone, you think dreadful, you know. But then if you watch the game, you're thinking, oh, that was his position. He was blocking the channels. He was the deep set of defenders. He was the one that created space for Share to get on the ball and actually pick his pass and stuff. So if you can balance the stats with your eyeball test, then fantastic, you know, because you won't catch everything by the eyeball either. And it's having that mix of both, you know, and that's what people need to start doing, because you have these agitator accounts that just go on stats only, you know, and they're predominantly in the Liverpool and Chelsea fan bases and stuff like that. And they're obviously being used by the club to fish out information. Like if you look like a Ryan Gravenberg there, after his 2 preseason games, if you were to look at Twitter and if you click on one Liverpool page, you're constantly getting fed information about him. And based on the stats that people are bringing up and like the narrative that they're doing, you're thinking they actually have the best number 6 in world football. But when you watch him play, you think he's not press resistant, he can't turn quick enough, and he never gets a setup. When people actually start pressing in season, he'll get absolutely murdered. You know, so it's getting that balance is key, like, you know.
Yeah, definitely. So you mentioned around Osula, you talked about Callum Wilson. Like me and Daz, we had a chat about this yesterday, and when the news broke last Thursday, along with Chris, and it does give you the feeling that Callum Wilson's staying at the club, and you were kind of alluded to that. In your opinion, are you convinced now that he's here for another season, or is it a case of he could maybe still go towards the end of the window?
Look, much like Trippier, the both of them have options in Saudi Arabia, and neither of the two of them are jumping at that move. They'll think that they'll get an option in the Premier League, but nobody's going to pay money for Callum Wilson now. With a year left on his contract and his injury record, and getting injured again already in pre-season. So we're not going to get anybody that's going to give us anything significant, you know. And if he's taking a pay cut, then he'd probably want us to balance out the wages and stuff like that, and that gets very messy, much like the Ryan Fraser situation. In this time with Callum Wilson, you're probably better off just letting him play out the season and cut your losses after that, because I don't think he's going to take the move to Saudi, because I don't think his family want to move, and that's not based on me ringing up his wife and asking her what's going on. That's it. Just, you know, reporters have been reporting this as well, that his family have already settled in England and they don't want to uproot the family to go to Saudi Arabia for 2 years. Kids are young and in school and all this kind of stuff, you know. And much the same with Kieran Trippier. I don't think his wife wants to move outside of England either, you know. So I think with the two lads, they're probably very comfortable. They know that they can get another year in England, and at the end of their contracts they can go to Saudi anyway, you know. So I don't think they're going to rush that move, like.
You're focusing on Wilson and Trips there, Sean. How about Miggy? You hearing anything of Will? And does he want to really stay?
He doesn't want to move, like, you know, like he doesn't want to move. And at this moment in time, they're not going to push him out either, because for that right wing position, everybody's shouting for right wingers. Like, who's available? You know, like realistically, if you want to put a significant sum of money on a right winger at the moment, there's nobody really available. You know, like Brian Mbeumo isn't entertaining transfer talk at the moment, from what people are saying, that he'd happily sign a new contract at Brentford and play another year there, you know, before he takes his move. So he's not rushing out the door there. So when the player's not rushing, Brentford can hold out for a fee. You're talking 60 million plus, and that's the peak price you're paying for somebody like Mbeumo. You know, who do you have then after that? That's in that category that we could go out and probably sign out. There's not many there, you know. So they're not going to push Miggy out the door, get you 15 to 20 million from him, because that's what you're going to get from him, and then be left short, you know. And I understand. Look, I get people's point of view with Miggy. You know, like he's not good enough anymore. You know, and we do need to upgrade, but there's not many upgrades available. You know, like I love him. I think he gives 100%. You know, and he tries his best and stuff like that. But it's not going to fill him with confidence either when people are constantly abusing him. You know, like he looks a shadow of the player he was a year and a half ago. But look, I think Miggy could move. Out of all the three of them, I think Miggy is the one that could move, because there is good money on the table for him. And I think that they will start to kind of push him a little bit more to go. But I don't think they're in any rush to let him go either. You know, good character, nice to have around the dressing room.
Yeah. I mean, interesting one.
Welcome, Chris.
Evening, boys.
Would you look at that, huh? What's your name?
No,
the rumours aren't true.
I know. Do you know what? I always seem to miss Sean's shows, so apologies for that, Sean. It's not that I don't want to speak to you. So great to have you back on, mate. You know,
I wouldn't blame you for missing them. I just make up a lot of transfer rumours and get paid. It was a €500 they were saying you paid me the last time.
Yeah, it was a lot, wasn't it? A fair fee.
That's why you're selling all the merchandise now, isn't it? You have
That's it.
PSR
Pay to
issues
afford
only.
Yeah, June next year could be difficult for double reasons with Newcastle at that rate. But no, so you talked about Miggy. Then you were kind of touching on Miggy. You think he's the likely to go out of the three. Is there a scenario? And this is for all of you. Is there a scenario where Miggy doesn't fancy the move if it's Saudi or whatever, doesn't want to move, but yet we still sign a right winger because Eddie Howe wants an upgrade in that position? Is there a scenario where you think that happens?
No, like we're very active in the market for a right winger. You know, like Johan Bakayoko was offered to us, but like his shooting is so erratic. You know, I think he'd struggle in the Premier League, to be honest with you. You know, if you're talking about 40+ million, I genuinely don't think he's worth it. You know, like Minte is better than him. You know, like if you watch Bakayoko play, it's very much head down, cut inside, and take a pot shot. You know, and the Dutch league is below the Championship in terms of quality. You know, so it's not a case of Eddie Howe is purposely keeping Miggy and we're not going to sign anybody else, or it's a case of Miggy out, somebody in. They are absolutely prioritising the right wing, but it's a very, very difficult position for targets at the moment. You know, the number one target and the person that they are waiting kind of for, and they're seeing if the dominoes fall into place, is Kulevetsky from Spurs. You know, like you have Spurs, they're looking at Pedro Neto or they're looking at Kudus. If that happens, I think you'd see us make a serious move for Kulevetsky. That's the one. He's the number one. He's the one that fits like a glove, and he's the one that they want. You know, and there's also, and I know I get shot down on this because look, I don't really buy into it too much either myself, but there's a feeling in the market that West Ham, if they get Yoran Giroud, they have to make a big sale to comply with PSR because they've spent a lot of money without selling somebody, and there's a feeling they could be open to selling either Bowen or Kudus. You know, one of the two. So they're waiting. You know, because they could go to Garuda, is it there for Mainz? You know, bring him in, take a punt on him, and they could get him in now. But they feel later to the window, in the last 2 weeks of the window, that dominoes are going to start to fall into place. Like, look at with Atletico Madrid and Chelsea today. You know, Gallagher goes to Atletico Madrid, that young fella goes to Chelsea, and then Man City are offloading Alvarez. You know, it's going to be one of those situations, I think, between Newcastle, Spurs, and maybe West Ham with the right wing position, that a couple of things falls into place and we end up with, say, Kulevetsky or somebody along the lines of that. That's who they'd hope for. You know, so it's not a case of just going. And the thing is, as well, how you treat players attracts players. You know, if Eddie Howe is doing what Chelsea do, you know, like everybody knows that it's not the managers pushing out the players at Chelsea, it's the higher ups, right? They know that if you're getting pushed out and if you're getting treated like shit at Newcastle, it's Eddie Howe. If Eddie Howe starts pushing Callum Wilson out, isolating him, pushing Trippier out, isolating him, pushing Miggy out and isolating him, all of a sudden it doesn't become a nice proposition to play for Newcastle. You know, like Eddie Howe will cut the legs from underneath you. If you turn up for training, if you give 100%, and if you show up, you give him everything, Eddie Howe will reward you with what's the word I'm looking for? Loyalty. And that's exactly where it is. You know, so it's kind of like Twitter is a microcosm of the Newcastle fan base, you know, but it seems to be the loudest. You know, for me, the likes of Miggy Almiron and Sean Longstaff and stuff like this, you're talking about two fellas that are first into training, last out of training. They're setting the marker on fitness tests in the gym, all this kind of stuff. We judge footballers on 90 minutes, but it's a 7-day-a-week job. You know, like if I was to offer you, you're an owner of a football club, and if I was to say, I'll give you a player that shows up first, he sets the mark for every single other player in that team to beat him. Fitness, lifting, you know, physical output, all this kind of stuff. Would you take him? He might be the greatest on match day, but you're talking that 5 days, 6 days a week, he brings up the level of your squad. Everybody will take him hand over fist. The problem
I
is
wouldn't take him. We have Chris. I wouldn't take him.
Yeah. I was just going to say, yeah, Chris is like the Longstaff, isn't he? He kind of floats around the comments and stuff like that, and he shows up the odd time.
Someone may correct me here, but like it was very obvious to me after the January situation where he kind of refused to leave, and I'm talking about Miggy here, when it was looking like it was done to Saudi, and then it never happened. I'm not sure he started a game after that. I know he had a little bit of an injury, but he might have started one. If someone can confirm to me, it'd be interesting to know. You know, are you boys thinking now that even if he does stay, that's why I asked the question, Sean, about will a right winger come in regardless whether Miggy goes or not? Because at this point now, like, it almost seems with how pre-season's gone that Murphy's ahead of him. If they go and get a right winger, he could potentially be walking into next season third choice.
But if you look at it, like, sorry, Pete.
No,
I have a habit of cutting people off. My apologies. I don't need to cut Chris off because he never gets involved in it. But you're like, when you're talking about, if you look at Newcastle, our transfer approach is surgical. That's the way it has to be. With how tight we are at PSR, we can't afford to take a risk on a player and get stuff wrong. You know, so when it comes to the right wing position, they're not going to rush it. They'll have one or two players that they will go all in on, 50, 60, 70 million if they have to. And if it's not them, then they might not make that move. You know, we're going into the season with, realistically, in the forward line, you're talking Isaac, Joe Linton. I know I left-sided eight, but I think if when Willock is fit, Willock probably plays in that left-sided eight position, and Joe Linton might push up. You have Gordon, Barnes, Miggy, Murphy. You know, we have Osula now as well, and you have one or two of the younger lads as well kind of knocking on the door, so they don't have to rush it. We're not in the Champions League, we're not in European football. You know, we have plenty of options that Miggy probably never gets near the first team. You know, he'd jump at the move to go back to America at the moment. You know, and he's probably holding out for that move as well himself. So it's not a case of, I think a right winger is a nice to have at the moment, not necessarily a need to have. You know, that we have to go and we have to take that risk on a player and maybe spend a 40, 50 million on a Bakayoko or a Mekawedi they've not really proven it, or even Kubo. You know, he gets a lot of good press. You know, he's the ultimate YouTube player. I think he averages a goal or assist every 4 games. You know, his ball carrying is brilliant in the half space and stuff like that. But he doesn't create enough, or he doesn't score enough, or to actually kind of warrant that 60, 70 million tag. You know, and in Spain as well. Like, for me, if I'm taking a player from Spain, I want to be seeing minimum 20 goals and assists a season. He doesn't get anywhere near that. And he's never shown that he can. You know, so it's a kind of, he's probably a nice to have kind of player, like, you know. And yes, Lucy as well, you know, great option. Hi, Chris, I'm Sean.
No, I just wanted to ask when you were talking about Miggy there and saying, you know, like the right wing isn't a must, it's more like a nice to have. Do you think if Miggy refuses to leave, in that he's waiting for that dream move, maybe back to America, do you think that in any way puts Murphy's place under threat, in the sense that, you know, if Newcastle were to receive a reasonably good bid for Murphy, knowing that Miggy's going to stay, would Newcastle then go, do you know what?
They wouldn't, I don't think, being honest with you, because again, you know, like, we judge football on 90 minutes because that's what we see, you know, but day in and day out on the training ground, you know, Jacob Murphy is the cornerstone of a dressing room. Jimmy, you can't buy what he brings to a club. You know, you can buy it that's going to give you 1 or 2 goals in a game and stuff like that, but what he brings to the club, and you see it with the media stuff and all this, like, you know, he is a cornerstone of the club. You know, don't get me wrong, pre-June, if somebody came in and offered, they probably would accept it, but no, what you get from him wouldn't be worth what you lose in the dressing room. You know, so I'm not defending Miggy Almiron here. Like, you know, I think he should move, you know, and it's time for him to move on, but I don't see the need to go out and bring in a Makawedi or a Kubu or any of these ones. It has to be the right player, you know. Otherwise, let's get to January and see what happens, or let's get to next June. You know, we only have 38 league games. Maybe say if we get a good run in the cup, we have 48 games next season, well spread out. You know, so I don't think we should need to rush that position too much. You know, I'm more concerned about the centre back position, to be honest with you, because if Nick Pope gets injured, we're in the same position again where our defence is probably 10 yards too high for the pace that we have in the back line.
Sean, before we go to the defence and the big talking point at centre back, stick with right wing. The lad from Galatasaray, Yilmaz, or whatever you know.
No, I know, like, I haven't, been honest with you. You know, like, I've seen all this stuff about Mitchell being brought in, but like, people have to realise as well, Paul Mitchell is a very private man, you know, but he does choose his journalists in the sense of, if you look at the good media he creates around himself, with the links to Manchester United and the links to Liverpool and turning down this role and that role, and he does select his people in the media and he does it well. He does know how to gain good press. The problem at the moment is, off the bat, the Northeast journalists pissed him off. Not all of them. I thought Mark Douglas's approach was excellent, real level-headed approach, but that's Mark Douglas in a nutshell. His reporting on the Eddie Howe interview versus the Mitchell interviews and stuff like that was really well balanced, whereas the rest of them jumped in 2 feet and it was like, there's a rift, there's a war, they're at loggerheads and all this kind of stuff. I just think Eddie Howe put on the plate where things were, and Mitchell done the same and Bounce does the same. You could see reading between the lines, I think for the normal person like any of us did, and probably like Mark Douglas, just to name one, it was probably more about Joanne Bounce coming in rather than Mitchell coming in, that he didn't want somebody kind of overseeing his training and getting him to curtail his training plans and all this kind of stuff. So the thing that I'm hearing is that the relationship is very good between Mitchell and Howe, and I think I know we get to it in a minute, but the Marc Guehi transfer is more of a gift for Eddie Howe than anything else from Mitchell to say that, look, I'm going to support you, and this is what I give you, you stick with us kind of thing. But yeah, I think that reporting of that Turkish lad, it seems like media noise because they've linked him. If you look over the last 2 weeks, I searched his name. If you search his name, put in Arsenal, put in Newcastle, put in whoever, they've done this link to every single club, over the past couple of weeks, and that's a club trying to sell a player. I don't think Paul Mitchell would turn up and stay in a room, labeled for Paul Mitchell. If you read the story, it was a bit mental,
Look, just before we get to centre backs, because we will. Look, we had a discussion on this yesterday. We've talked about it in the previous show last week when the 3 of us were on. It's one that Newcastle fans don't like to talk about. I just want to get your opinion on this, just while it's out there, and it's about all the noise with regards to Anthony Gordon. Obviously, a lot of Anfield accounts, Liverpool accounts, the Anfield sector. We talked about this yesterday, Daz, with regards to Anthony Gordon. They're now saying, after all the talk before about it's a case of when, not if, they're now reporting, Fabrizio has said about, it could be pretty difficult to sign him. So their stance has very much changed in the last few days from it's going to happen to maybe it might not. But in your opinion, do you see Anthony Gordon leaving or even clamoring for a move when he returns? Apparently he's going to be returning this week.
So he's on Tyneside today. I think they did unsettle him, and I think they let him down. I'm being honest with you, and just based on kind of what I've heard. I don't think he was happy with how everything was handled in June, because he was after coming off his best season. He's committed to the club. Conversations before he left was, when he comes back, we'll talk about new contracts, this, that, and the other. And then he's getting told by his agent there's a potential move to Liverpool, that Newcastle have to make a PSR deadline and they could possibly sacrifice him to Liverpool. Of course he was gutted, and of course it got to him. Jimmy, but I think there was probably a week where that went on for, and then you had Amanda Merdad left, Paul Mitchell came in, there was reassurances given to Anthony Gordon, this club is the place for you, we'll talk about a new contract when you get back, and he is very happy to stay at Newcastle. If Jurgen Klopp was still in charge at Liverpool, and with 2 years left on Gordon's contract, and with the way things unfold at the end of June, because it was a mess, I think we'd probably be in a very, very different situation. Because I do genuinely think that he was upset with how things were handled. Not that he was agitating for a move, but like any of us would be, put ourselves in that position. You're coming off your best season, you love it at the club, you've made a move up there, you've brought your family up with you, you're settled in, you do all the media and all this kind of stuff. He's a great ambassador for the club. I didn't get told that there's a potential that they're trying to flog him to make the PSR deadline. I understand why they have to do it, but from the player's perspective, of course he's going to be disappointed. But all this agitation of Fabrizio Romano stuff and all this, look, we know it's all nonsense. I actually DM'd Fab the other day and I asked him and he said, Sean, it's all nonsense. And you know what? I sent that screenshot on to Pete Davey, didn't I, Pete?
Yeah, you did.
Yeah. And you know what? People can think I'm making up and I don't care. I'm at that stage in my life where people say 3 + 3 is 10 and I say, yes, it is, my friend. Yes, it is.
And that's just an Irish mag chat.
Yeah, that's a bit of fun too. Great lads. But yeah, you know, on Gordon, so my take on Gordon is, yes, it's true he's signing a 3.5-year contract. All I need to do is do a quick calculation of the or amortization in around the Gordon transfer in the season of, and you see how his fee is actually broken down. But I think there is a trigger for an extra year on that the club will trigger the extra year into the contract. But they're in talks for a new contract from anyway, so I don't think it's going to be an issue.
That was the other question, because and it was on the back of Mark Douglas's piece that came out this morning, and there was a lot of kind of should we say negativity around Anthony Gordon's contract, and a lot of fans on socials were saying, why did we even sign him to just a 3-year contract? Now, for me, I understood it, but like, do you guys think it was a bad move only signing him for a 3-year contract when we initially signed him, you know, in that January window? Like, I want to get your thoughts on this, because I didn't see an issue with it, whereas a lot of Newcastle fans were like, were kind of like perplexed with the fact that we only signed him for a 3-year deal. But like, that's Chris. What do you think about that? Do you think it was that a bad move by Newcastle?
Go ahead, Chris.
He forgot he was on the show. He doesn't show.
No, I wouldn't say it was a bad move by the club, and it wouldn't surprise me if that came from Gordon's camp. Like, you know, because we don't normally offer such short contracts. Obviously, we don't know the ins and outs, but I imagine that contract length probably suited Gordon and Newcastle at the time. The fact that as Sean's mentioned, you know, it sounds like there's a 4th year included in that. That's probably alleviated, you know, the worry or the panic over the fact that it was only 3.5, because then it could potentially move to 4.5. But due to his age as well, and the fact that, you know, I think everybody was expecting him to hit the ground running. You saw what Amanda and Meardad and other people at the club thought of Anthony Gordon, and that, you know, he was going to be a stellar signing. He was, you know, had the potential to be one of the best players in the Premier League in time to come. That's what was said on the Amazon documentary. So I think there was probably an anticipation that around this time a new contract would be in the offing anyway. So we'll never truly know where it came from. You know, the idea to have the 3.5-year contract with the option of an extra year. But for me, I think there was always a plan around this time to negotiate a new contract anyway, because we were, well, me particularly, I was really surprised at how well Anthony Gordon slotted in at Newcastle, because I had some doubts. I think I told you boys, didn't I, when we first signed him? I wasn't wholly convinced. And then he proved me completely wrong. But maybe the owners, you know, had full faith in him. And the fact that he is where he is right now, off the back of what was a disappointing Euros, fantastic that he got into the squad, but really he should have played more minutes. But that's another debate. But he's probably higher up than where I think, well, certainly where I thought he was going to be, but maybe the owners didn't, and maybe they knew he was going to be ready for the new contract. And as it is, that's exactly where he is right now. So now, to show him the commitment and, you know, try and extend his stay, we should be looking to try and give him a new 4 or 5 year deal. And as Sean's already said, with the amortization, that will only help the club as well, in order, you know, to offset the remaining balance that's due to Everton.
I'm not going to lie. I understood it, because I think, Chris, we were probably the opposites in that, because I remember during the time you weren't quite sure if that deal was the right deal when Gordon came in. I was the opposite. I was like, I can see it. But we kind of maybe switched places, because by the end of that season when we finished 4th and he wasn't really putting the performances in and he wasn't really playing well, I was a bit like, oh, like, is this the right move? And I wasn't quite sure. And it was only really that Chelsea game, the last game of the season, where he scored his first goal at Stamford Bridge. He had a really good game that day, and I thought, oh, okay, maybe this is the click. And then the Euros kicked on and all the rest of it. But I could see it, because, like you said, like this summer with Anthony Gordon's deal was always going to be the summer where either a new contract was going to be offered to him, or if he'd not gone well for the first 18 months, there would have maybe been a conversation about, okay, maybe can we cash in at this point? Can we move him on? Is he the right move for Newcastle? And that's what I thought. So that's why I thought the 3-year deal wasn't really a bad move, because it gave Newcastle and Gordon the opportunity for Gordon to prove himself and Newcastle to watch him and see how his progression has been made. Obviously, last season he was sensational, so his price has gone up. I think if that had not happened with PSR, with this situation that Sean just talked about, I think we'd have been sitting here with Gordon probably already agreed a new deal, and we'd have been absolutely golden at this point. And I don't think anyone would have been concerned about it. The thing that I like about it, and Sean, you touched on it, Chris, you have as well, and it was in the piece from Mark Douglas, is that they have got a view to extending it by a year. It's something that other clubs do quite a lot. And I'm really glad that Newcastle have done that. They also incorporated that within Jamal Lascelles' contract. So just before his ACL, everyone thought his contract was out this summer and he was gone. But what they had in place is the option to extend for another year. So that's the first inkling that I saw of Newcastle adding that into players' contracts. And the fact that they've done that with Gordon shows me that's something that they're going to incorporate into other players' contracts moving forward. And that for me is a good sign, because that gives Newcastle United a little bit of power in that situation. They can decide whether they want to trigger the extension or whether they want to let a player go. And so that holds a lot more value. So if you're talking about Anthony Gordon with 2 years left on his contract, you're thinking, like, this is the summer to maximize, a bit like Miguel Almiron.
I have to pop there for 2 seconds, lads.
Yeah, no worries. And the same with Miguel Almiron. Miguel Almiron, his contract finishes in 2026. He's got 2 years left on his deal. So we're still in a position where this summer is the summer to get maximum fee. It's almost the same for Anthony Gordon, but now it's changed because we've got the additional year. So it actually means that a team like Liverpool can't use the fact that he's got 2 years left on his deal to maximize that profit or that potential to sign him, because Newcastle going, hold on a second, we've got an extra year on, so all we have to do is extend that contract by a year, and you've got to pay 3 years worth of that contract out, and that changes the amount of money that you are having to pay out for a player. It's as simple as that. So I didn't see the negativity around it like other people did, and I was a bit like, okay, I get that. But I just wanted to ask you guys, because I saw it on socials, and I was a bit like, just what? Like, it wasn't that bad, but
do you know what, Pete? I just wanted to add in, and I know Daz has already brought it up, but I think it was Jimmy Watt saying Alfie Harrison only signed a 2.5-year deal. Could he be getting a new contract as well? And it's exactly the same thing, isn't it? I think it's the new modern way of the player protecting himself and the club just kind of going, okay, well, that works for us as well. Because let's be honest, if Alfie Harrison's only signed a 2.5-year deal, he must be confident, or his representatives must be confident, that either yes, he's going to prove that he deserves a new bigger termed contract,
pathway into the team.
Yeah, or it could be that he knocks on the door and goes, listen, I've been here like 12, 18 months. I'm no nearer to getting into the first team. What's going on? And then the club, like you said earlier, Pete, could just go, right, time to part ways, time to cash in, while we can still get a bit of value. Whereas if we'd have given him like a 6-year deal, and after 18 months or 2 years, we're going, this isn't really going to work out, we might struggle to get rid. And then he's then sitting on a potentially half decent contract, and we can't get rid of him. So not only is it a challenge for the player, but it's also it's an opportunity for the club to go back to the discussion table and go, right, what are we doing? Are we extending? Are we looking to get rid? So I think it's quite a modern day thing. And just to mention, not that I want to talk about work at all, but someone else in the chat there put about doing a contract where you've got +1 as an option. We do them in our work. When we sign contracts, with recruitment agencies and stuff like that, there's always, here's your contract, but then there's a +1 and a +1. So if you want to extend by a year, you just activate it. If you don't, you part ways, but you haven't got to go through that whole paperwork process. So I think it's just modern day dealings, really.
Yeah, definitely. And David H has put in there, I assume he thinks it's kind of different because Gordon's fee that we signed was for 45 million, but and I get that, because the Alfie Harrison and Gordon fee is very, very different in terms of it's gone out. So I get that I get that point, but still, at that point, if you're paying 45 million for a player that, look, let's face it, what Gordon performed last season is what we always hoped he would get to, but after that first 6 months, nobody was necessarily expecting. We're expecting him to have an improved season, but not to that sort of level where he was probably one of the best, if not the best, left winger in the Premier League. And I don't think anybody expected that. So I think at that point, it was always good to kind of have this middle ground where you reviewed it after 18 months. And the thing about it is we did pay 45 million, and it is a lot of money, David H. You're absolutely right. But we could also see at 18 months whether we could potentially recoup some of that back. We might have lost money if it had not performed, but we could have got a little bit of something of that back and then reinvested that in another player that maybe was more of a sure thing. In fact, what we have done is that we've seen a fantastic performance last season from him, and he's almost probably close to doubled in value, because I think it would be double that Newcastle would even consider selling him. And even then, I don't think we would. But, so we've kind of gone the other way. So look, end of the day, it's worked out perfectly. And we've got that additional year that we didn't know about until this morning from Mark Douglas. On top of that, there's a chance he could sign a new contract, which is absolutely spot on for us. It's a dream scenario. So, Sean will be back with us shortly. He's just had to nip off very, very quickly, so don't worry. And we'll be getting into all of that talk as well. But Daz, anything you want to?
Yeah, let's run the sponsors for a second, and well, at least we'll have that out of the way then. But shout out to the Radio Shed. And yes, Sean is back just in time to pick up a radiator. And if you also like a radiator, contact Russ for 20% off. Russ at theradiatorshed.com, and use the code LOADED20. And also on telephone 077 666 04112. Yeah, we'll do the rest of them later on.
Yeah. We'll get through all the sponsors at some point. Sean, let's talk centre backs. Just wanted to give a little bit of a storyboard on all things Marc Guehi. So, obviously, we know David Ornstein broke it on Friday, or did he? On Friday, we know there was confirmation from the likes of Ornstein and that on Friday put it out that we were in talks. Now,
who else? Who else is ahead of the game, Pete? Come on, say it.
Let's roll through this, and then we could discuss that bit afterwards. We did talk about yesterday, and it's important to kind of mention this because this might run into a conversation that we have that. Jack Talbot, friend of the channel, put a piece out saying that they were looking at a player that we've talked about as a collective four in terms of their alternative to potentially Marc Guehi. On top of that, this morning, there was all the talk about Liverpool coming in and being interested in him. However, and I listened to it, but they didn't put out anything official on social media. So I have pulled this off NUFC HQ. And basically it's from what Alex Crook said this morning, that Newcastle are growing in confidence over the signing of Marc Guehi. And it's obviously likely, however, Newcastle would look to move players on as an addition to that. Other friend of the channel, Graham Bailey, has put out in the last hour, so just as we've been on this show, Liverpool are not planning a move for Marc Guehi this summer. Alex Crooks from TalkSport also mentioned that too. And on top of that, they've said there is no release clause in Marc Guehi's contract. They're looking at a fee of around 70 million, and it will be potentially a record fee for Newcastle to sign him. So look, Marc Guehi's in the eye of the storm at the moment. Seems to be the priority. What do you think, Sean? Do you think this deal gets done with Marc Guehi coming to Newcastle United? Be a big signing. Oh,
He's muted
he's
again.
up mute.
Can't hear you.
We normally get this before the show.
Yeah.
Because on mute, let's come back on. But no, it'll be interesting. Just while Sean's sorting out his headphones, obviously we were talking about this yesterday because obviously the Marc Guehi situation is obviously it's the forefront of everyone's kind of conversation now. What are your thoughts at this point? Just running through that sort of storyboard. Do you think that deal will get done with Marc Guehi?
I hope so. I think it would be a real statement signing. I think he's off the back of a really good Euros. I think he's someone who, you know, definitely improves what we've got at the moment. I'm a massive fan of Fabian Schär. I know Guehi plays left centre back. Well, he did for England anyway, but I'm sure he's more than capable of playing right centre back, particularly as he's a right footer. I think he's that statement signing where I think the other you know, top 5, top 6 clubs look and go, yeah, we wouldn't have minded him. He's a pretty good player. So for me, I think he is an upgrade. The price is obviously a bit of a sticking issue. You know, we've spoken a lot recently, haven't we, lads, about Malik Chow, and we were all quite keen on him. And what I find really interesting is the fact that Malik Chow allegedly is available from anywhere, if you believe, from anywhere between 30 million euros and 40 million euros. So the fact that we've turned our attention to Marc Guehi, who apparently commands a fee of at least £60 million, that's quite an upgrade. So you know that aspect of it is interesting. We know that Eddie Howe prefers Premier League experience. You know, and it's often documented that, you know, we can't make mistakes in the transfer window. We can't, you know, bring in players who don't end up turning out very good. So, you know, a lot of research, a lot of work's done in the background to make sure that we bring the right players in. So I understand why they're going with Guehi potentially, because I think he's more of a safe bet, albeit he's a lot more expensive. But I think he's a fantastic defender. And, you know, if he was to sign, I think the big problem last season, as we all know, there wasn't a problem with the scoring of goals. It was leaking the goals. The fact that Nick Pope's back, and then if you add Marc Guehi to that, and then obviously, you know, hopefully a fully fit Sven Botman with a fully firing Tino Livramento and a fully firing Lewis Hall, we're in for an exciting season. But I do think that we need to get that right centre-back position right. You know, we've got to make sure that we bring in the right player. And really, you know, I don't think anyone would look back, say we signed Marc Guehi and he wasn't a success. I don't think anyone would look back and go, oh, we shouldn't have signed him. Oh, that was a risk. You know, he's probably the surest bet of all the players that we've been linked with. And I do what we get him. I really do.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, all good.
Yeah.
Go for it.
So as I would have shared, which is on early Tuesday, I suppose, with yourself and the Irish mags and stuff, that we were pushing for Marc Guehi. So my information and kind of stuff that I've got confirmed today and over the weekend is that there's two things really. It's that the deal was more presented in Newcastle than us chasing them. You know, we had a watching brief because at the start of the window it was Arsenal and Manchester United have been heavily linked, and they both fell away. You know, Liverpool don't have a strong interest in them because they don't feel like that they need to spend 60-70 million on a player that's not going to replace Van Dijk straight away. They don't want to replace Van Dijk. They're looking at a left footed centre half. They want to get in somebody like a Henkepe or somebody like that. So Liverpool aren't really at the table, and the deal was more kind of presented to Newcastle as if to say, you have a free runner, they may be interested still, you know, which they absolutely are. He'd be Eddie Howe's top target, you know, but it's not someone probably 2 weeks ago that they thought was achievable. You know, over the last, I suppose, 24 hours, 48 hours, I've been told that we have a 55 million offer on the table for him. We have made that offer. So that's the starting point. You know, so the negotiations with Crystal Palace at the moment there, the base fee is 55 million. And what are the add-ons going to be to that? You know, like add-ons and clauses are different. You know, add-ons are guaranteed. Clauses will be very much, if we qualify for Champions League, it's 5 million. If we finish, you know, in the top 6, it's 3 million. If he gets 60 appearances, it's, you know, this kind of stuff. But the negotiations have started and the door is opened at 55 million with add-ons on top of that. You know, so it's very much progression in the right direction. Do I think it will happen? I honestly don't know. At this stage, it's very much, okay, he wants to move. he would love to move to Newcastle. He has 2 years left on his contract. He will only sign a new contract if there's a release clause in it with a significant pay rise. So it'd be a release clause in his new contract, which would be less than what we're probably going to offer from now, which actually makes it even better again for us. Chelsea do have matching rights on the deal. So if Newcastle offers, say, 55 million, Chelsea have to be notified of this. And if they want to match our offer, they can match our offer. So that's a worry, that there is matching rights there with Chelsea. So it'd be interesting to see where it goes. I can't see him going for another right side of centre back.
Sean, surely Chelsea don't need another centre back. Like how many did they need? Like they've still not got rid of Trevor Chalobah. Like they're literally trying to throw him out the door, and he's almost refusing because he doesn't want to leave. They've already took Tosin from us on a free transfer. They've got Badiashile, they've got Disasi, who neither look like they're going to move. They've got Wesley Fofana just back playing. Like they don't need another centre back. Surely they and this is not directed to you, Sean, at all. This is just in general. Me thinking out loud, I'm thinking, yeah, I knew it was. They'd made it aware on that Chelsea would have sort of first refusal to match it, but surely they're not going to be wanting to.
I can't see them doing either, no. At the end, like for me, I think now until the end of the window, we have a free run of them. And if the deal doesn't work, if Crystal Palace don't make the deal work with Newcastle, you're probably taking 10 million off his transfer fee in January. And who's going to spend that on a centre back in January? Who really needs a centre back in January? So you have that issue. Then it's going into next summer, and he has a year left on his contract, which puts him on the back foot even more again. So I think Newcastle are in the driving seat with negotiations here, and the door was open for us to actually enter the room on this. I think if Guehi wasn't offered, we'd probably be closing out a deal on Malik Torno. At the end of the day, we thought this deal was agreed and negotiated by Amanda Staveley and Steve Nixon pre-Paul Mitchell coming in. And that's why we could speak to the player and talk about terms and present the project to him and stuff. Paul Mitchell has come in, and he doesn't like the way that the terms of the deal that were there originally. I know AC Milan have upped their price because you see Lenny Euro go for 60-70 million. Real Madrid have been scouting Malik Tor for a long time as well, and they're thinking, okay, this 35 million that we were going to accept doesn't seem reasonable now when we see this price of centre backs. So they've elevated their price a bit again. So I think this week we should definitely get an answer on the Guehi situation, because Newcastle want a resolution soon. Because if it's not him, they'll move on to Malik Tor, and they have also been offered a chance to talk to De Ligt as well. I know his wages are crazy and stuff like that, but he's somebody that's been on the agenda as well for the past couple of weeks. So for me, it's probably they'll find out what happens with Guehi, right? And if that doesn't, probably Wednesday, Thursday, they'll probably pull the plug on it if Palace aren't playing ball, and then they'll move all in on Malik Tor.
Still be a good signing, even if the Marc Guehi situation didn't work out. Malik Shaw or Chow is a good talented centre back. It would be, or would you say it was an upgrade if we brought him in? It would upgrade our sort of ceiling of centre backs.
I prefer Tor, to be honest with you, over Guehi.
How come?
He's better in the air. He's better on the ball, not at running with the ball. He defends the lines, but defends the channels a lot better. Guehi gets caught ball watching a lot. Watch back the game at St. James's Park with Guehi. He was at fault for probably 3 or 4 of the goals because he stepped out too high. I hate when defenders step into midfield in attacking transitions, and he does that a lot. The final against Spain, the second goal, he's the one that gets caught past the ball because he's ball watching and he doesn't see Aratzibal moving in behind him. He does get caught ball watching a lot. He's 24. That can be coached out with him. You bring in the Eddie Howe factor. But I think when you're talking, how would you say, defensive attributes, I think Chow has more in his locker, and I think there is more to improve there than there is with Guehi. Don't get me wrong, Guehi's pace at centre-back is unbelievable, probably the quickest centre-back that you have. And for what Newcastle need, and if Pope drops out, having Guehi there, unreal. I'm not saying one or the other, but I do have my reservations about Guehi that he needs to pay more attention to the game because he gets kind of distracted by the game in front of him because he thinks he can get in and win everything, and that leaves space in behind. Watch back the game at St. James's Park, and you see him stepping in too many times, and Mitchell gets caught out of position because of him. Maybe it's because he's a right footer playing left centre back, but he does get caught ball watching, and he's not good in the air. He's 5'11", not that that's an issue, but there are two things that are critical for centre backs in the Premier League.
no.
You look at the way
5'11", you wish.
look at the way that Man City and Arsenal are building their defenses. They're building 6'2" monsters, and that's what they want because defending corners, attacking corners, is vital in the Premier League. So I think they both have pros and cons. But for me, I think Malik Chow probably has a higher ceiling. I think people are skewing the metrics on Chow because they're rating him on last season. Playing a totally different system, high line, that whole defense was done by long balls multiple times, and he's probably the one that could get closest to the player who's making that run, so it probably exposed him a little bit more. But if you look at the season before, he was absolutely exceptional, and you're kind of buying in a dip. I think Malik Chow, is all around, I think he has the potential to be a better player. And if we were to get him for 35 million on Guehi for, say, 60, I think Malik Chow is the best option every time.
Sean, can I ask you a couple of questions? Oh, sorry, Daz. Go on, mate. Go on.
Yeah, no, because I'm going to lead you in here, Chris. Right, for one of your questions, right? But because Ali asked the question, I think you've answered your version of it. Sean, is who is the secret defender? I also have it in my DMs as well. People ask me to ask two names there as well. You mentioned, but Chris, I'm going to let you go for one of your suggestions, I think.
Yeah, you know what? I was really keen to ask Sean this because I was talking to my mates today about it, and it's a two-pronged question, Sean. So the first one is: do you think? Obviously, I talked before about the price difference in Chow and Guehi. Do you think that will impact on how much that we spend on the right winger? And then my second question was going to be: obviously, we've seen that Everton recently have signed. I think it's Jake O'Neill.
Jacob Bryan.
Jacob Bryan, sorry, I always say O'Neill. Yeah, Jacob Bryan, and he came in from Lyon, and he's very similar in certainly like his attributes and stuff to Jared Brantwaite, and it just made me think. And I was talking to the boys about it offline and saying, that now that we're going into this ballpark, of like 60+ million, do you think there's any way that the owners would maybe look?
I don't see it. No, I think that the talent pool is so deep for right-footed centre-backs that you don't need to go all in on Brantwaite to play him on the right side of a defence. I think it's a right-footer or nothing, and I think it's Guehi or Malik Chow, and it's either one or the two of them. And that's kind of where I'd be landing on that. I think we will find out soon enough on Guehi because it's not something that the club want to drag out. I think both clubs have their cards on the table, and I think we'll probably find out. We should definitely find out this week where we land on it because I know Newcastle want to close out as soon as possible. I'm not saying that it's close by no means, but it's just they want an answer. This could be, yes, we're moving in the right direction, and we'll probably get wind of both clubs progressing, but it still could take a week or two to settle the deal.
And do you think the extra fee for Guehi, obviously thinking about the Chow fee, do you think the extra fee for Guehi will impact on the right wing at all?
Do you know what? Possibly not, because a transfer kitty is very hard to measure. Like realistically, what you're doing is there is no such thing as a transfer kitty. It's amortization, wiggle room, basically. It's how much can you put on your books for the next 5 years, and that's what your transfer fee is. So with that, they have the budget to go big on a right winger and a centre back. They can add maybe 30-40 million in amortization to the books because we came in flat this year, say, so losing 30 to 40 million this year isn't a big issue because we have 105 million wiggle room again, if that makes sense, because that's how the rolling period works. So we have that wiggle room to carry debt again this year, so we're not under pressure to sell as such. But I think the best rule of thumb going forward for Newcastle fans, and to be realistic with us navigating PSR, without sponsorships being in place, is that we would have to sell around £40 million worth of players every season to tread water with PSR and to kind of be above with the top teams, So realistically, we need to be making up that 105 million every year until we do build our commercial portfolio with player sales. So, divide that out. That's why I say 35 million every year is what we need to be bringing in on player sales.
And this is the difficulty, isn't it? Because under obviously Mike Ashley, we're seeing people say, oh, he left us financially, he left us in a pretty good position, i.e., we didn't have loads of debt and stuff like that. But because of the quality of the squad, and you can see it yourself when you look at the incomings and the outgoings. We don't really get much money for outgoings. We just don't, and this is why it's so difficult, to try and catch up. Man United go and sell a player, they can get 40-50 million for that player. We've probably only got 6 or 7 players where you go, we get a significant fee for them, but they're the ones that we don't want to lose, and that's the difficulty.
There's a narrative as well being built on social media that it's like, wow, if Newcastle get Marc Guehi, people forget how big of a club we are. We're worth over 1 billion now.
Yeah.
If you take Arsenal, if you take Man City aside, our first 11 is probably stronger than any of the rest. Our midfield three of, say, Joelinton, Bruno Guimaraes and Tonali, they get into every team outside the top 3. Take Isak and Gordon, they do as well.
Okay.
You're talking Tino Livramento and Hall are young, but they're probably the best under 21 fullbacks in the country. Sven Botman is, let's not judge him last season because he was playing with half an ACL. Season before, he was the best left centre back in the country. And then you have Fabian Schär, who is definitely the best footballer centre back there in the Premier League. Probably John Stones would rival him. When you take into account that William Saliba isn't that good on the ball, but he's an exceptional defender. Yeah. So people play down how big Newcastle are now as a football club. Marc Guehi getting a move from Crystal Palace to Newcastle is a huge deal for him, and it's a big step up. People are a bit deluded by this PSR scramble and the way that we had to sell players kind of last minute, the way that the season went for us. People kind of forget the trajectory of the club and where we're actually going. We're a big club going big places. For Marc Guehi, Newcastle is a big deal for him. So we shouldn't be surprised being linked with these players. I think we've kind of diluted what's happening at the club because of this PSR nonsense and having to sell Minte and having to sell Anderson. Like Man City sold Cole Palmer last season. And people then you'll also have this narrative of Aston Villa having an unbelievable transfer window. I genuinely think when you look at the players they sold versus the players that they bought, they haven't brought in better players.
The weaker.
Everybody raves about Onana, and you have these 2-dimensional tacticos there online that think, wow, Onana's 6'5" and he can pass a football 30 yards. That's incredible. They're baffled by his profile and his stature, not his football ability. They're just baffled that somebody that big can pass a ball like he can. Nothing about Bruno Guimaraes absolutely bullying him around the pitch every time he plays against him, and he's half his size. So it's kind of like it's this social media thinking of, if you click on the Aston Villa page once and you see their signings, all of a sudden your feed is flooded by, Onana doing this and whoever else they sign doing that, and it almost changes your thinking. It's TikTok thinking is basically what they're calling it. Like, you're making decisions based on 15-second videos of these players that are bang average. I don't really think there's many players in the Premier League that have been signed by clubs outside the top 2 that I think, okay, I'd really love them at Newcastle. So the window's been slow for everybody in that sense. So it's not like we're not doing anything. It's just the way that the window is. And you have to be surgical with PSR. So for Marc Guehi, it's a big move for him. It's a bigger move for him than it is for us. And I think the player sees it that way as well.
Yeah, definitely. We have to remember, just linking to what you were saying about West Ham and Aston Villa, but we've touched on West Ham previously as well. Everybody's talking about those guys because they've made a number of signings, but we have to remember we always knew our priorities coming into this summer. We always knew right wing was priority. We always knew centre back was priority. Like everything else was a bonus, whereas all of those other teams had to sign those players that they've signed. So everyone's talking about Somerville and Fulkrug and the players at West Ham, but they had to do that. They had to bring the age down of their squad. They had players that left on free transfers. Their first 11 needed significant upgrades. So they had to make the amount of signings that they did. Aston Villa lost, like I said, Douglas Luiz. They've just lost Moussa Diaby. They had to make significant changes, as well as the fact they're playing Champions League football. So on the basis of looking at how many signings they've made and who they've made signings are, there's some people that go, they're doing all this business. Why aren't we doing our business? It's because we're being very much reserved and making sure. And I think someone else touched on it the other night. I think you've touched on it as well, Sean, is that we need to make the right signings, not necessarily just go out and sign anybody. And I think you were touching on that earlier on, where you were talking about like Neto and a few other right wingers. It's not just about going and getting anybody. They have to be the right one to come in. And I actually like that approach. I like that from Paul Mitchell. It's frustrating because you want signing through the door, you want to get excited, but at the same time, we want to know that player coming in is going to make a big impact at Newcastle United.
But there's been a huge shift already in how we do business, under Paul Mitchell. So if you look at the youth players that we're bringing in at the moment, for example, under Ashworth and last season, they were trying for the cream of the crop constantly, and we were constantly getting knocked back, and we couldn't bring these players in. Mitchell's approach seems to be get every player in if they're available, and if they have a good skill set, let's get them in. Let's see what they can do. If you bring 10 players up from London, one of them might make it to the first team or even maybe into the 21s, but they will attract more youngsters to come up from London because they'll have a group, they'll have friends, they'll have somebody that attracts them to the club. They'll have like-minded people there already. Bringing in a lash youngsters from Ireland, that will attract more Irish youngsters to come over. Last season, they were kind of picking and choosing new players to bring in. Paul Mitchell is very much of fill the academy. Let's get these players in. Let's see who rises to the top. Give them the opportunity and go from there. The amount of youth players that we bring in is Paul Mitchell 101. If you look at Monaco, right, when he took over Monaco, I think they had one youth player on the squad, right, and that was 2018, 2019. In the last 2 years at Monaco, right, which would have seen him kind of finish now his project, they have debuted 13 players from the academy into the first team in the last 2 years. That is absolutely incredible, no matter what league it is. And that's what Paul Mitchell's thinking is, flood the academy, get these players in, the cream will rise to the top, and keep that cycle going constantly, and that's where there's a big shift at the moment. And he will look for value for money, and he's meant to be an elite negotiator. I'd be lying if I said I knew the ins and outs of him, because when it comes to transfer deals and stuff like that, he is a very private man. Like everybody at the club is under lock and key at the moment, not to talk to people. So if I'm getting information, any information I can get at the moment, it's from representatives that are looking to push their player to the club and stuff like that, or you're getting second-hand information and you're trying to piece it together. Look at how the journalists are behaving at the moment, without naming one. There was one last week, nothing's close, something is close, nothing is happening. An hour later, Osula was actually in the door. I have no update, there's nothing happening. Yeah, like it's like that poor man had an absolute mare last week, like referencing the, like I said, stuff, was something I don't even use anymore. Didn't pretend he doesn't know me when I know for a fact he knows me. I'll talk to you or off camera about it, but like this kind of stuff. And then like he's almost acting like an ITK teenager. It's like something has happened. I don't know what happened. It's going to be a surprise name. It could be tall, but something is close, So they don't have a read, because I think they've already burnt their bridges with Paul Mitchell trying to create a war between Eddie Howe and Mitchell that didn't even get a chance to develop yet, so their opportunity to actually kind of grease the wheels there and get inside information won't happen. Like, the club is under lock and key at the moment, and I think it'll stay that way when it comes to talking to the press, leaking information. And he doesn't like this whole thing of leak about player X and create a smoke screen and go for player Y. If he wants somebody, he gets somebody. There is no smoke screen. He's straight down the line. I go for the person I want. You sign NDAs. Let's have this conversation and see where it ends up. So the fact that the Guehi stuff has leaked, it is fairly progressed. I think the Palace side will start to play this. We want this. Newcastle will play the tough negotiator card, and they'll both kind of play it out in the media like they're tough negotiators, and they'll meet somewhere in the middle, and the fee will be argued for weeks on end, where it's 55 million, it's 35 million, it's 45 million, it's 100 million, and in the background they'll settle it and they'll leak what they need to leak, and it'll be probably an undisclosed fee, and off you go. Do you get me? But so, and that's where the balance is at the moment. So there has been like what people have to allow for as well is like Paul Mitchell came in. He's only been at the club maybe 5-6 weeks. I want him to make the right decisions and not just make decisions and bring in players to appease the fans. I actually have more respect for him, rate him higher, and admire him more that he hasn't jumped the gun and brought in signings to say, look at me, look at me, look at me. A true sign of confidence in somebody that's confident in their ability is that he hasn't done anything to show he's the man in charge, or he's bringing in players and there's a load of players coming in and stuff like that. He sat back, he's done his interview, and he's walking away in the background. People can say what they want to say. You look at Tim Schneiden when he came in at West Ham. he didn't get his players. Moyes wanted players. He was leaking to the press. Moyes' side was leaking to the press, and it was an absolute mess. You know, they created a power struggle straight away. How he's handled stuff, how he's handled the media, and how he's approached the transfer market so far, it's amicable.
It's going to be an interesting watch, especially Mitchell against Dougie Freedman. Who's gonna come out on top there? We'll wait and see. But no, it's going to be interesting to see. And like you said, Sean, that you can imagine something's going to be happening over the next day or two. Like it's not going to be a long drawn out process. It will happen quite quickly. But I know there's a number of questions in the chat.
Good questions as well.
Yeah, can we fly through the questions, because I'll have to go soon, lads.
Right, let's crack on.
How do we?
Right, we're going to go first to there's a few in here about Oscar Bob. And anything on Oscar Bob?
Very interested, yeah. But again, it's, look, who isn't? You know, do they make him available? What are the terms of the deal? You know, it's a pot shot, like, but look, he's having a great tournament. He had a great tournament out in America, and I think Guardiola want to see him up close.
Okay, let's move on. Simon says, guys, would you offer Palace 100 million for Guehi and Eze?
Look, I think with Eze, and I know I'd probably get criticised for this, if I have a fully fit Joe Willock, you will get more output out of Joe Willock than you will out of Eze. I know Eze is a great ball carrier. He ripped us apart. You know, that's as we were kind of bandaged together, but I wouldn't be paying 60, 70 million for Eze because I have Joe Willock already. People forget how good Joe Willock is because he's been injured. You know, it's kind of out of mind, out of sight kind of thing.
We better ask this one from Audrey because he's asked it a number of times in a number of different ways. But Jonathan David, surely that's closed now after William Osula coming in.
Well, if Wilson goes, I wouldn't be surprised they'd looked at it again. But that's a big if.
Big if, yeah. Okay. Can Ing Lee from PSG?
For some reason, you know what, I asked about this, and we watched him a load at Mallorca, and I had a couple of tweets about him watching him at Mallorca. So the scouts definitely like him, but anytime I've asked, and you know,
Breaking news and exclusive. The man we were talking about just a minute ago, Luke Edwards, has just said Newcastle are close to completing a deal for Marc Guehi. That is what's just come out literally in the last second.
Like I said, what did I say? 55 million bid on the table.
We've got nearly 600 watching live. That is the latest. So we just had a big discussion on Marc Guehi exclusive. Newcastle close to completing the deal for English international Marc Guehi in a major coup for the club. So,
which means we could be back on again tonight.
What was my tweet to you today? What was my DM to you today, Davey? We have made a £55 million bid, and they're talking around that.
Yeah,
you know, and I just make it all up. You know what? I should be like a playwright or something like that. Like, shouldn't I? You know, great crack. The Diaries of an ITK. You could show up at the end sometime, Chris.
Yeah. Mate, I'll come to the book signing.
Let's hope that this isn't like the Barella one, and he blames his editor for putting in the wrong words.
Right.
Yeah, you know.
Fingers crossed. No, I don't want to talk about it being Barella related. Forget that. But no, that's the news. It's just come out. Massive.
Would be nice.
Yeah.
Let's crack on with a few of the questions. To fund that transfer, Dubravka, are we going to any step closer to offloading Dubravka?
Not as it stands, lads. You know, I think he will get a move, but look, I think we have 4 goalkeepers. Something I can confirm as well is that we did pay 20 million for Vladimir, whatever his name is. Let's call him Vlad.
Mamadashvili.
Yeah. No, Vlad, whatever his name is.
Greek
there.
Look at this fella. I holiday in Greece is Vala Majigado.
I was asking around. I was asking around. It was a Forest fan that gave me the
No, it is. We did pay the 20 million from. And we're still looking at Trafford. You know, I know they've kind of held loose negotiations with Burnley again recently. Just maybe sign him, loan him back for a season and take him next year. Something along that situation, because they rate him very highly, and supposedly the new crew that have come in, and Mitchell and them, they rate him really highly as well. And it's kind of they want to kind of get the deal done if they can now, but it's very complicated buying him, loaning him, giving Man City their percentage, and then Burnley having to pay a fee on the loan. It's a crazy one to try and navigate. But look, the top target for us, a goalkeeper, is still Trafford. But go for it, Dave. That's complicated. If that didn't happen, Trafford would be a Newcastle player, you know.
Right, next one. Sean, what are your views on any sponsorships in the pipeline?
Just to kind of dispel this myth of there's 5 sponsors at the Premier League's table and they're refusing to look at them. You have a 10-day waiting period. Any sponsorship that you put to the Premier League, right? And these are only for sponsorships that are related party transactions. They have to have a resolution in 10 days. So there are no sponsorships waiting in the Premier League with a file in a dirty cupboard and Richard Masters is pretending he's never got them. You know, there's a 10-day period. The thing with sponsorships are, you only name a stadium once, you only name a training ground once. You know, much like the Emirates with Arsenal, for example. If we go away now, and if we take, say, stadium naming rights, you know, for example, on St. James's Park, just say Aramco at St. James's Park, right? What they will get passed for fair market value now is nowhere near what they will get in 2 years' time. So essentially, if we sign a 5-year deal with Aramco now to sponsor St. James's Park, we'd actually lose money in a 5-year period than they say if we waited 2 years, if we got, say, Champions League this year, European football again next year, or FMV, fair market value, would be way higher. So that's why the club are waiting. What they want from external people that aren't attached to the club, say, you know, from the likes of Adidas and stuff like that, if they're going to sponsor a stadium, what they want for the stadium sponsorship, nobody has offered them. And the same with the training ground sponsorship. And if they rush it now and get somebody in, they'll end up probably losing money in the long run. So with a project, you have to think 5-10 years, you know. So as things stand, nothing really in the pipeline. They do want to they are looking at renaming the stadium, the training ground, training short sponsorships, but they haven't got an offer that's enough to them to actually commit to.
See, I like that, Sean. You say Adidas like me. That's the first time I've heard Adidas on this show. Or even... Yep, that's what I thought.
You should come on more often.
That's it now, every show.
Chris, Sean, Chris.
We'll have to start the Sean and Chris show going forward.
This one from Bill. Has anyone heard anything more about the Man City case versus the Premier League that went to arbitration a couple of months ago?
No, so this will look at how they handled the Tonali case. You know, like Tonali, like, so basically, as I said last time on the show, they presented all the documentation in October. The Premier League didn't realise that they had to ratify a ban as well for themselves, so they left it there for nearly 10 months before they acted on it, because they didn't have the people to do it. The Paqueta case, they know all the charges, they know how to progress it, but they don't know how to go near it. With Man City have everything that Man City is presenting are above board. The Premier League have to prove that these companies don't exist, or they're shell companies and all this kind of stuff. That case is so complicated. Like, honest to God, lads, we'd be sitting on this show and our kids will probably be running a loaded mag show by the time that case is kind of resolved, you know, because when they do put down a ruling, that will be contested, and then Man City are going to have the best lawyers in the world. They're going to tie them up in logistic or legal fees and all this. It's going to be an absolute mess. I'm not going near it. You know, at the end of the day, Newcastle are going to have to build it with the current structures that are in place. They know what's in place. They need to progress forward with that.
Okay. Anthony, you want to say, Sean, on Amanda and Mirdad leaving? Anthony, you want to say on that topic? I know you've said a few things in Irish Max. Maybe you don't want to say them on air, but Anthony, you want to say on that topic?
No. I think everything speaks for itself. You know, like you see the goodbye messages, and there was a person excluded from it. So look, I think no, I won't say it. Look, what I said, I believe, and I won't put it on air because look, let's just thank them for what they've done. You know, they're probably the most significant people in the history of Newcastle for our kids growing up. You know, they've given my son and my daughter, who are 6 and 3, they've given them a Champions League club to support, and probably the same for yourselves, lads. You know, so anything that would probably take away that from that, I wouldn't talk about. You know, at the end of the day, the lady was a broker who done one of the biggest deals in football history in Man City and in Newcastle. Then you have the live golf stuff. She's incredible what she does, but she's not a person to run a football club. You know, with Darren Eales now in place, we have somebody running the club day to day that is used to doing it, that's done it before, and he's built clubs in Atlanta and stuff like that. So a good move forward. It's sad to see her go because she's an incredible lady, you know, and we could never thank her enough for what she's done.
Agreed. Here. That's it, more or less, for the questions. I think we're parked the questions for now. Should we zoom back in on Guehi again? Anthony, you want to say that since it's looking like this is going to get over the line, according to Luke?
No, I got a couple of DMs there and stuff like that. Just while I was just checking there, and it's much like what we said earlier, that they'll know this week and they'll close out this transfer over the next week or next week. You know, so today was kind of decision day. The 55 million was put in this morning, and then I know, look, don't bother throwing figures at me, because the Tonali stuff went from 40 million to 70 million to 5 million. You know, what I'm told is Newcastle started at £55 million yesterday. That was put on the table for Guehi. They thought on that today. Crystal Palace agreed that they would build from that 55 million forward. So whether it's 55 million plus 10 or however they want to word it, that's exactly what it is. But Crystal Palace were happy with the base fee of 55 and working from that. My expectation would be that Guehi would be probably a Newcastle player, maybe over the coming days, start the next week. You know, I was told there would be a resolution over the next 2 or 3 days, and we know if he was going to sign or not. You know, so
I'll just add on to that. So within the piece from Luke Edwards is pretty much what you just said, without even reading the piece. So he said looking to finalise the deal for Marc Guehi with a deal in excess of 60 million. Whether that's add-ons or not, we don't know. But like like I say, I think it's the full package deal. A couple of other things he mentions as well. They talks have progressed well over the last few days, and there's confidence on both sides that there's that the deal will be reached. He then goes on to say that basically transfer talks have not yet been concluded, but the move is on course to be finalised before the weekend.
Who's he best mates with? Anthony Gordon. Who's in contract negotiations starting next week? Anthony Gordon. You know, so we're a big deal, aren't we? You know, It's nice to support a football club like this. You know, when it comes to Champions League, I think we're a Champions League club again next year. You know, and it's kind of, let's give the lads more support on social media and stuff like that, the likes of the Longstaffs and the Miggies and stuff like that, because to build a successful squad, it takes all shapes and sizes. You know, and I think we could all be a little bit more supportive and kind of a little bit less hasty in our reactions. You know, do you mean everybody from the lady that serves the tea to the man that scores the goals, and Alexander Isak, everybody is of equal importance to make a successful football club, and I think we need to start treating them like that, you know. And I know it's these faceless teenager accounts, like, you know, that do this, but call them out on it, you know. And again, or even just don't give them the time of day. You know, it's kind of, it's one of these things, as I said, is social media is a microcosm of a football club. I think it's when you get on conversations like this, you know, and podcasters get a lot of stick and stuff like this. Like, at the end of the day, we're just four fellas chatting about football.
Yeah.
You know, and that's it, like, isn't it? You know, like, I'm not on here breaking news saying that we're signing Marc Guehi or anything special like that, like, you know.
And I think on that note, I think that's a nice note to finish on.
Lads, it's been a pleasure as always. Nice to meet you, Chris.
Good to speak to you, Sean. Good to speak to you all.
Come back to us when you have a right winger, Sean. So thanks to Sean for coming on chatting to us. Absolutely. But yeah, let's finish off the show with a few shout outs to the sponsors. We've already done the Radiator Shed. Shout out to manscaped.com as well. We have had the promotion code running across the bottom of the screen, 20% off at manscaped.com. Type that in, you get 20% off all the range of products and services across manscaped.com. So check that out when you get a chance. And also, as we've mentioned earlier as well, and as I take off away the banner as well, but our loaded store went online there yesterday as well. So you can get a range of different things there: cups, t-shirts, bags, hats, polo shirts, cushions, coasters, whatever you name it, it's on there. We'll probably add more stuff to it as we go along. But yeah, go check it out.
More stuff to come.
Yeah, there's more stuff to come for sure. So yeah, the link is in the show description, and I'll put it scrolling at the bottom here as well for anyone that may want it. But yeah, and as we said last night as well, anyone that does purchase something, we're going to go into a draw. So we're going to, at the end of the transfer window, we're going to put all the names that bought something into a draw and give away a prize. So that's a nice one as well. So that's it. Any last words, lads, before we shut it down?
Exciting times, boys. Exciting times. Once that deal gets, obviously, it was important to stress in the piece from New Cambridge that the deal's not concluded yet. But as he says, there's confidence on both sides that deal will be done. And if we're getting closer to it, it means that there's an acceptance for both Crystal Palace and Newcastle United that deal wants to be done. Just two bits, just to add to that piece that I mentioned. One thing, Newcastle United weren't kind of worried or didn't fret with regards to the fee that Palace wanted. That's an important part. So they were always willing to pay a significant fee for him. And the second thing is that obviously Marc Guehi is very, very keen to join Newcastle United. So you've got two real positive things there. Newcastle United weren't afraid to put the money down. Marc Guehi wants to come to the club. When that type of thing happens, a deal is always likely. So I think we're going to be having a discussion about this in the next 2, maybe 3 days. And funnily enough, we've got some interesting guests over the next 2 or 3 days that we can discuss with in a little bit more detail. So I love when these weeks come together really nicely.
It didn't happen weeks ago, but yeah, it's nice that it's all coming together now. Right, that's it. You've had your lot. See you in the next one. Thanks, everyone. Good evening. Drink it, like me, then tell me if you like that, like that.